how can we be better allies in supporting communities? And it's not just about donations and writing checks and volunteering, right? There's a level of integrity and connection. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's so important. This is what everybody wants to know. I mean, I think most people are on board with like being anti-racist, right? I mean, hopefully most people are. But I think there's like a disconnect between I want to do this and how do I do this? So a lot of what we get from people is like, just give me like a handbook. I want to do this. And it's a little more complicated than that. It's ongoing work. It's not going to change, unfortunately, anytime soon, but it's like that constant commitment that's going to kind of change the tides. So there's a couple things. First, I do want to mention that Project Potluck I'm a person of color. I'm the only staff member. So our whole staff is people of color, me, and then our board. So we're led by people of color. We're for people of color. And I think a lot of times allies want to center themselves in the solution, but really there's incredible people in community that are doing this work, and figuring out how to support them financially with volunteerism is a super important part of this, because I think a lot of times there's this impulse to like, I'm going to create my own program or I'm going to do this, but really there's people in the community from the community who are already doing this work. And one of the best things that you can do is support their efforts instead of trying to duplicate. So I think that's one of the biggest things, is to find amazing people of color in the community who are doing important work and figure out how to support them. So that's the first thing. I think the second really important thing goes back to this concept of reciprocity, which is, again, not centering yourself as the solution, but really thinking of yourself as like a part of a bigger system. And so reciprocity is about giving and receiving. And so you can't really be a true ally if you think that you're just going to be giving. You have all the answers. You're going to be the mentor that tells people how to do things. You really have to open yourself up to like what you need to learn and what you're kind of seeking, and enter into a reciprocal experience with somebody. So I think a good example of this is, and I use this example often. I read it in a book and I can't remember the author, so I need to figure out how to give her credit. But it's like Juneteenth is coming up. It's a great time of year to kind of reflect on privilege. I think a lot of white people are uncomfortable with how to celebrate Juneteenth. A lot of them get the day off now, which is great. But it's an awesome time once a year to take stock of all of your privilege and to figure out how you can start to transfer some of that privilege over. So if you're a person who has the privilege of walking into the boardroom and feeling pretty comfortable saying your opinion, how can you start to shift that over? Maybe when the mic gets passed to you, you can say, oh, who always has an amazing, perspective? I'd love to hear from, X. Like, would you like to share or give credit to somebody, or kind of start to realize like, oh, I have this amazing privilege and confidence in talking, but maybe somebody else doesn't. How can I start to create more equity? Maybe you're asked to be on panels frequently and you say, I'd really love to be on that panel, but I'd rather give my spot to this person, or I won't be on that panel until this person joins us, or I'd love to join your board, but if you want to bring me on, you need to create another board seat and it needs to be filled with a person of color. So starting to figure out what your privilege is and being able to figure out how to share that or open up doors for others accordingly. Maybe you have an amazing network and relationships. How can you open that up to people of color? It's something as simple as like, if you have a brand or an entrepreneur who's a person of color who you think is doing amazing work, offer to walk the floor at Expo with them, offer to make an introduction to them. I mean, there's so much, but not coming in it from a like savior standpoint as like, I'm going to do so much for you, but also figure out how you can begin to have a true reciprocal relationship where you're learning, maybe you're asking for help too, because there's so much to unlock from both sides. And those power dynamics of like hierarchy prevent us from having that reciprocity oftentimes.